Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite times in San Miguel, Dia de Muertos. We moved here 10 years ago, and we started dressing up 8 years ago. And every year since, we make the trek up Aldama and parade around the Jardín with our outfits. I wish I had a picture of us. We do it right. It is a wonderful time. Is there anyone that has not experienced Dia de Muertos? Oh, your first year here? First year. Oh, be ready, be ready. It's a wonderful, wonderful time. So if you have your costume all picked out, right? We do. We gave Gary a costume out of our closet, okay? And we're about to celebrate a wonderful time, celebrating lives that we've lost, that we now want to remember, okay? And I think someone said that the only time when you really die is when people don't mention your name. And that's kind of what this is all about, okay? Time to remember. So today I have two very good friends of mine here. We have Aldo Ibarra and Emma Salazar, and they are with Follow Me Tours. They also have many lectures and tours available for Day of the Dead, so they are the best in town. So we've asked Aldo to come and be a little bit specific about altars and ofrendas. Anyone not know what an altar is, an ofrenda? You're going to learn today. So with that, Aldo, please come and join me, and thank you for joining us today.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for sharing your time with me and for talking to you a little bit about Day of the Dead, specifically in the subject of altars and offerings. As Ron was mentioning, we are leading a program for the past almost 15 years, introducing people to the elements, the things that you will start seeing since a few weeks ago until November 5th, November 6th, no, depending on how the weekend or the dates of November 1st and November 2nd happen. And if someone at the end will like to know a little bit more, we're welcome to help you, okay? So the first question is going to be, what is an altar and what is an offering? A lot of people sometimes confuses or mixes a little bit the both terms, and the thing is that there are two different things. First, an altar, you know, like a pocket definition about it, is just the structure where you're going to set up your ofrenda on these days. So the altar will be the structure, and the ofrenda, or the offering, will be everything that will be set up on top, on the side, underneath, or whatever you are looking in there, okay? You can hit a little bit. We don't have an exact origin on when the altars were firstly placed, or who did it first. Were the Aztecs, the Mexicans, the Mayans? Was it a Spanish introduction? Was it a modern thing? The thing is that the way I like to say it, it's a compilation of different steps in the history of Mexico, because we can trace it back to the way indigenous people treated death and their journey to the afterlife. In some cases, you have that the people buried the dead ones with pieces of obsidian, with jade, with fruits, with weapons, because they had the belief that on their way to the afterlife, they had to encounter other missions, and they needed to fight these missions, to accomplish these missions in order to get to the last step. So Mayans, for example, during the Hanal Pikshan, they have a different way to set their altars. They're all made out of fruit, about eating and a feast for the soul. But if you go to Veracruz, San Luis Potosí, with the Totonacan people, they have the Chantoló, and they have a big tamal that, according to historians, it was made out of real human flesh and body parts, and they don't do it the same nowadays. But if someone has done it or seen it, well, please tell me so I can research a little bit about it. But also, if you go to Michoacán, the Night of the Dead, you will see that people like to put some of their altars on the top of their tombs of the dead ones, and they spend the whole night eating the food in there. So a little bit the idea of this lecture, this talk to you, is that we learn a little bit about the elements that we will see on the altars in the next days. There is a way that a lot of people starts placing the altars since October 27, 28, and they take it away on November 5th, no, because it's dedicated to tragic death, to children, to the older souls, etc. Nowadays, the altars are more public. No, you will walk in the jardín and you will see around the square 10, 20 altars placed by different organizations, schools, the municipality, etc. And the reason that they just place it early morning on the 2nd and they take it away is because if we leave it all the time, then we'll have a lot of animals trying to eat what is supposed to be for the dead ones. So we don't want the dead ones fighting your pet for the food on the altar, okay? So along with the slides, we will be seeing different images that I have taken on different trips on the way people set the altars. Some of them will be in the supermarket with bunch towers of beer or alcohol, or you can go to a museum and you will see a very cultural thing, or you will go to an archaeological site and maybe you will see a little bit like a pre-Hispanic one. So the idea also here is that you see that there's not like a guidebook on how to build an altar, or this is the correct way to do an altar. The altars can be very different, can be very colorful, can be very sad for a lot of people, can be a very happy moment, because this is something that you are placing for the dead ones, which can also be a little bit funny because some of the elements we place there are things that at some point maybe have killed that person. Maybe the person's died of lung cancer because he smoked a lot, or someone drank a lot. And it's a little bit funny for me when I come after life, you know, to see that something that killed me, they place it again in the altar. It's like, really? You want to kill me again or what? Okay? So, okay. We're going to start talking about the structures. Maybe you have heard, you have read. Now the information with social media, you find links to newspapers, website, a friend told you, someone told you about the structures. And you will hear basically like 3 basic answers. People will tell you that the altar must be 3 levels. Someone will tell you the altar must be 9 levels. And someone will tell you that the altar must be 13 levels. We will see why, the reason, but basically part of the an indigenous tradition on like an altar of 1 level, it starts because in many cultures, when people was born, babies were delivered on a rock, like a carpet made out of fiber that we call it petate, and this petate became like your partner for life. So you were delivered in there as a baby, you sleep on the carpet for the rest of your life, and when you died, they used to wrap your body. So that's a phrase for the people who have been long enough in Mexico, or for the Mexican friends in here. We have a phrase to mention about death that is, ya se petateó, which is, he has been wrapped in his petate. So basically, since this carpet is placed on the floor, the elements that you will place on this structure or on this altar will be on this carpet. That's why for a lot of indigenous cultures, indigenous traditions, we have that the structure must be 1. But again, this is because it's related to your petate of life, that you are delivered in there and you will die and be wrapped in there and then buried. Some people will... Here we have an image, for example, in a chapel from the Otomí villages in the Sierra Gorda of Querétaro, that you will see that the altar is placed on the floor, and you will see some flowers, you will see some of the copal, the saumador, some of the food, and and as you can see, it's placed on the floor. In this case, it's a little bit like a public altar, so because the petate is something very sacred, but you will see that in indigenous communities, the altar will be like a one-level thing. We're talking a little bit about the indigenous, but then Spanish people came in the 1500s, and they started to introduce the Catholicism as the official religion. If you see a little bit around you in this room, this beautiful mural, we're seeing different indigenous groups around us, and many of these cultures, they were worshiping diverse deities. They could have 3, they could have 7, they could have 13, 18. A lot of deities were represented on this. But when the church came, they were like, okay, let's organize this a little bit more, and let's establish the idea of heaven, hell, and the purgatory in the middle. So that's when people start to adopt structures for the altars in 2 and 3 levels. In 2, representing heaven and hell. When they introduce number 3, they introduce the idea of the purgatory idea. Behind me, you can see an image of an altar in Yucatan, close to the Sisal area, and you will see that food and fruit is abundant in there. And you will see also that this happens a lot on religious festivities. When the syncretism happens, and indigenous and religious, Spanish, etc., start to blend together, they start to allow to decorate crosses with some like pagan symbols, which were like the sun, the moon, water, and stuff like that. It wasn't really like a devil head or something that could be really considered like pagan. But eventually, at some point, the church decides to cover these pagan symbols, and if you see the cross that is started to be placed in the middle of the altar, we will see that the cross is being like covered with like a scarf, with a bandana, with something to cover or to hide the pagan symbols. Another thing very important with the indigenous tradition is that they started to replace the amaranth crown that some people consider it related to the pan de muerto, that we will talk in a few seconds. But they started to replace the amaranth crown, that it was one of the sacred meals of the indigenous people, or corn, and then they start putting images of saints, idols, or crosses, in this case, and virgins. This year, if someone is Catholic and want to gain like an access to heaven when people pass away, this is a Jubilee year. And in the Jubilee year, usually Catholic people, they have to accomplish 7 spiritual tasks and 7 physical tasks. After you accomplish this, you go to confession, and on the Jubilee dates that usually are at the end of the year, 2024 as well will be a part of the Jubilee year. They usually open a little arch on the door of the church, and you can cross it, and then that's how you can kind of like gain access to heaven. So this is related to the 7. 7 is a very special number for not only the Catholic tradition. In other, like the Greeks, they believe in the god of the Murgo, that is like 7 circles. Some Mayans have a relationship with the number 7. So you will find, in the numerology of different cultures, not only in Latin America or on the continent, but around the world, that 7 is going to be a special number. It's a completion of the cycles and many other things. So you will see that other altars will have the 7 levels. And the 9 and the 13 levels is a little bit the Mexican cosmovision of the afterlife. Depending on the way you died, you could go somewhere up, you can go somewhere down. And basically these structured levels were 13 levels up until the Omeoyocan, which was the 13th level, or 9 levels down into the Mictlán, the realm of the dead ones. So that's why in a lot of places you will find that the altars will have 13 levels, 9 levels. But again, the levels is up to everyone. If you have a little table at home and you want to start this year for the first time placing an altar, you can start putting like the elements we're going to see in a few seconds. In some buildings, like museums, like I'm going to show you an image, for example, of the University of Guanajuato steps. They use the scenario to make a more elaborate altar. So nowadays, basically, altars are based on how impact or how shocking you want to impress people with your altar, no? But as long as you have some of the important elements, it's something that it's okay. It doesn't have to be 1, 6, 7, 8. It's up to everyone, okay? And now we're going to start talking about, well, this is a little bit the cosmovision of the indigenous people. If you see, we are on the flat level, and then we have levels up, we have levels down, and that's why the 13, the 9, the 7, the 6, and more. Now we're going to start talking a little bit about the offerings, las ofrendas. What are we going to place in the altars? Again, if you go to Cancun, Yucatan, Veracruz, Acapulco, Maruata beaches in Michoacán, etc., in there you will find fish, you will find turtles, you will find shells, a lot of elements that come from the ocean. People were making altars in the ocean. They like to put endemic animals, flowers, plants. But if you go to Mexico City, for example, you will see other kind of vegetation, other kind of animals, other kind of meals. So again, the region, the place where you are geographically talking, it will be very important to the elements that you will find in the altar. Nowadays, for example, a lot of families, like I was mentioning before, they can put the favorite meal, they can put the favorite drink, they can put the cigarettes that grandpa like, or you can put the soccer ball that your kid used to play, etc. So the altars will start getting elements that are that were something important for the people who used to enjoy in life. But some of the elements that are kind of pretty basic on this, we'll start listing them. So we have the candles and the sahumador and the copal. The candles was something that was introduced into late 17 and 1800s. In Mexico, we have a lot of novelas, the soap opera shows on Televisa, TV Azteca. And there this section of the novelas that we call novelas de época, like novelas that are ambience in the in the 1600s. And it's amazing when it's like a very passionate scene, like hundreds of candles around the couple. And it's like, do you know that candles were extremely expensive in those years? Like only a few people were able to afford getting candles. So that's why the introduction of the candles came a little bit later. And it was in a way to replace the cempasúchil flower that we're going to mention also. But and there were companies or businesses in the 1800s that on the funerals, they rented candles for the funerary events. So again, people had hard access to candles. But nowadays you go to OXXO store and you can find cheap little candles, or if you're a little bit greedy, you can go to a church and secretly take some. I don't know. They're blessed, so it's better for the altar. And the copal and the sahumador. The sahumador is this kind of like it has like the shape of a chalice. It used to be more like a little pottery basin. And then the copal is one of these many incense rocks that we have in the market. Here you can go to San Juan de Dios and the oratorio, I'm a little deorientated, oratorio, little things that they put on the alfeñiques and all that, or El Volcán on Canal Street. In there you will find authentic copal. No, in here you will find mostly incense, or maybe they have a copal. Haven't walked into the little shopping places. But the copal, the idea is that you start burning it, and in many indigenous traditions, this is the way you open your altar. This is something very important that I forgot to mention, but I will drop it here. Placing an altar one thing is, okay, I'm dedicating this year the altar to my grandfather who passed away recently, and I put his favorite food, I put his photo, and I put his things he loved. And then you have to offer the altar, you have to like open it, because we have the belief that the altars in a way is like a portal for the souls of the people who passed away into the world of the living ones. So in order to welcome the soul that you want to come, then you have all these elements to purify the soul, to scare away the bad souls, because you open the door and not all the good souls will only come. Sometimes evil souls or bad souls will also come as well. So that is something that the Saumador and the Copal is for. So they're dedicated to the four corners of the universe, and then it's like a ritual to scare away the bad souls. And again, depending on the region where you are, in some places like Mexico City, surrounding areas was very common, the copal, but if you go to the south, you will find other incense rocks that are available there, or even in the north, less availability, but you can find some at the markets. Here we see another example. You see the little like chalice cup on the left side. That is the saumador, and the smoke is from the incense rock or the copal. You'll find also some skulls, the candles, religious images like the cross, and the pan de muerto. That is something very important as well. One of the most important elements, and you see it already in hotels, in the Jardín, in the plazas, in the Pipila underpass on La Comer, that the government is now placing a lot of cempasúchil flower. The cempasúchil flower, the marigold, long story short, supposedly is an old legend that there was a couple that went every day to a mountain, to a little hill, and they dedicated flowers, offerings to Tonatiuh. That Tonatiuh is the deity of the sun. One day the male was called into a battle, into a war. Eventually the girl, Xochitl, she finds out that he passes away. And as a way like an ultimate sacrifice, she sacrificed her soul to Tonatiuh. Tonatiuh, the deity of the sun, very impressed with this sacrifice, he decides to grant the energy of the sun in this flower, which is now represented in the cempasúchil, and then a hummingbird, which is one of the sacred birds that kind of like come after life. That the hummingbird came and touched the bottom of the flower, and the flower opened into 20 petals. Cempasúchil is what it means, the flower of the petals, 20 petals. So the legend, you will see a lot of representation of the marigold with the hummingbird, and supposedly is the ultimate offering of this couple, that they sacrifice their soul, he on the battle, she on the sacrifice for him into Tonatiuh. And that's why we have the belief that the cempasúchil is the flower that is going to illuminate the path from the underworld to the world of the living. If someone has seen, for example, Coco, the movie, there is a part in the movie, well, that there is like a bridge that is connecting the world of the dead ones with the world of the living ones, and it's all the cempasúchil, the marigold, because it's the flower that has the energy of the sun. And the pan de muerto, many historians, archaeologists, and anthropologists have determined that the pan de muerto is in a way a replacement to the amaranth crowns the amaranth seeds that the indigenous people used to eat on this time of the year, and it was just like a replacement. And then on the top of the bread, as we saw it before, if you see, it has like a little bones on the top. That some people make a reference like to the cavalry or the Holy Sepulchre, that if you see it's like a little skull with two like bones crossing, and that's a little bit what you see. It's the idea of having bones in this. And even though you find it in City Market, in La Comer, since like August. The idea is that it's a bread that you only eat on this October, late October, early November. And the skeleton figures, and I'm not going to go deep into like the Katrina, this is a whole subject for a whole lecture, but again, skeleton figures have been placed for centuries as an offering. We have some visions of indigenous people that they used to use the head to ask for the offerings, and supposedly the tradition of the calaverita, that is kind of like the way Mexican kids ask for candy, and now it's being introduced a little with trick-or-treating, and now kids go together, Mexican, American, Canadians, they go asking for money into the houses, and they go to the store and buy the candy they like with the money they gather, you know? So it's kind of like, I have always said that for me, my personal point of view, Day of the Dead is a living tradition, because it has been changing and evolving from the origin of the times, or at least as far as we can track it, until nowadays. You know, like for me, it's funny to see the kids merging the calaverita with trick-or-treating, and it will keep happening, you know? Now, Day of the Dead, you will find that you have a lot of dinners, upscale dinners, and a lot of things. Okay, and it's something that keeps changing and keeps evolving with the time. We already talked a little bit about the petate, which is like your mattress for the eternal sleep. You're delivering there, you're sleeping there all your life, and then you're buried in that. And then we have the xolos and the papel picado. The xolos, supposedly when you die, and you are starting your way to the Mictlán, no, the 9 levels down, the first level will be like a dark water river, and the way to cross it is with your mascot or your pet. So supposedly for the people who have mascots at home, you have to be really good with them, because on the afterlife, they will be like your spiritual guidance. And this dog that, again, we have always considered him like an authentic Mexican dog. Some recent evidence have been showing us that maybe he came from South America, but again, it's on the debate there. But the idea is that when you go to the underworld, the first level, and the first thing you see down there will be a little xoloscuincle, the furless dog, and that is like a reddish, blackish color, and this will be like your spiritual guidance into the afterlife. Other cultures, for example, when you go southern, like to Oaxaca and Tilcajete, the little town where they make the alebrijes, the alebrijes, in a way, is like an adoption of this spiritual guidance and mythical creature that will guide you in the afterlife. And the papel picado, that you can find it in every stationery store or in the same places we mentioned before, the markets. The papel picado, one of the ideas is that the little holes is the idea of representing air, wind. The air and the wind is going to purify the soul as well. And it's also the idea of allowing the good souls to go through the little holes, and in the solid part, the evil souls will get stuck. That's another idea for the papel picado. And usually it used to be just decoration of like a flower or little images, because you fold it and fold it and fold it, and with scissors you cut it. But nowadays it's being like printed, and you see even the name of your business or Dia de Muertos or whatever, you know? And the salt, you'll find that in many altars you will have a cross made out of salt. The idea of the salt is to purify the soul of the dead ones. And flowers, we mentioned the cempasúchil, which is the most important flower. But for a lot of people who didn't have access or a lot of money, they were able to buy the jaguar's paw or the jaguar's claw, which is this purplish flower that you will also find it very common in this time of the year. And finally, food, seeds, that like the amaranth or corn, that were important sacred animals. And finally, to finish and open some questions if you have, some images on altars. Again, you see the cross made out of salt. Look at all the fruit, the bananas, the mango on the left upper part. Look at the circles that is the jaguar's paw, the purple one, and the orange one is the cempasúchil. And now you can go to the markets as well and buy sawdust. and then they tint it in different colors, and you can make beautiful carpets with it instead of using a lot of flowers in there. And again, as we also mentioned already, personal objects like a ball, a cap, a hat, whatever, food, and the photos. And Ron mentioned that supposedly the idea of the photos is that when you no longer mention this person or you no longer put the photo on the altar, that the soul is going to end his afterlife. And more images on different altars, on the Museum of El Carmen in Mexico City, on a little house also as well in Mexico City. This was Plaza Reforma 222, 2 years ago in Mexico City. Beautiful one in Dolores Olmedo that is closed now, but used to be the altar in some years ago. And the one that I was mentioning, every year, the University of Guanajuato changes the altar. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And if you have questions.
I know you're gonna take some